Hi, this is Stevie. I did a little sketch from this photo of the flower cart. I had taken this in California when I was on a trip, and I already have drawn the outline of the little cart, and I just penciled in an area for painting all of the flowers. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that this can be done. And you can see that I have some pieces of scratch paper with different sketches on it, and I'll explain those in a minute. First, I have to get through painting the little cart, which was a black cart, somewhat rusted, which is a black cart. And I'm just using a mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to do that. That mixes to a nice black or dark color. And so I'm just using a small, I don't know, number 2 or number 1 brush to do that. And I laid down some water first when I did that wheel because it makes the color blend better, but that area was really too small and I kind of wish I hadn't done that. So later on I decided not to lay down the water first, and I like that better. So just something to be aware of. I started out with, when I thought of this video, I started out thinking that I would be just demonstrating how to paint the little flowers in the cart. But what I didn't think about was the type of paper that this sketchbook is. And paper makes a huge difference. And when you look at my little demonstrations above, the 2 little pieces of scratch paper, those were done on Arches 140-pound cold press. And Arches is a really good paper. This sketchbook is 140 pounds as well, 140-pound paper, but not quite as good. So with those 2 little sketches, I had laid down some water first. I spritzed it on or just flicked it on with my brush. And then I just added little bits of color here and there, the pink color and the purple color, and then added the green later on. And I'm going to demonstrate that right now for a 3rd time, just to give you an idea. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways you could do this. But I got surprised when I went back and did it in the sketchbook. So here's how I did it. You can see that I just randomly flick some water on the paper so that I have some wet areas and some dry areas. And I do that quite often when I paint because I like the combination of hard and soft edges. And so I started with the pink color, and I put that a lot all over because I'm going to make, for the purple flowers, I'm going to use that pink as well. So I just kind of laid it all in as pink, but I did leave white areas, as you can see, for the green leaves, and there could just be some white areas because there's some white flowers, who knows. So this is how I started. Laid down the pink, and then I added a little bit of cobalt blue to that pink. And that pink is a quinacridone rose, like a permanent rose. And so then I added the cobalt blue to that permanent rose to get the purple color. And just laid it in here and there. There was quite a bit of it in the original photo. And I'm not following that photo exactly, but just using it as a reference. And so just getting the colors in there. One thing you'll notice if you look at the 2 that I had already done, the color really lightens up when it dries because I use so much water. So if you do it this way, you pretty much have to plan on going back and doing it a 2nd time. Do a 2nd layer to get the paint darker, at least in some areas. So here I'm just continuing to add. I had some color, or some of the little flowers extending down below. And then I started adding green, and that is my green gold, which is a light green, like a yellow green. And you could use yellow if you don't have green gold. Any light green would do as well. And I like to do that before I add any dark green. But what happens when you do this, because the paper's still wet, some of that color will bleed. And if that doesn't bother you, that's fine. It doesn't really bother me too much. It's just something to be aware of. And so now I took that green gold color and mixed in a little bit of the cobalt blue. And, oh, I'm sorry, no, that is not green gold. I picked up a little bit of sap green and mixed it with the cobalt blue. And so now I'm adding that to where the green gold was. And I still want some of that green gold to show, the light green and the dark green. So I think I add some of it later on too. Just moving around to areas where I think it needs some of the greenery. This paper, this sample, doesn't have as much water on it as the first two that I did. And you can probably tell just by looking at it because the color did not bleed out as much. And this is okay. This would be acceptable to me. Every time you do it, it's going to be different. And it's going to be different for every person just because painting is like handwriting. It's unique to each of us. And I go around once in a while and soften some of the edges with just some water on my brush. But that's a nice way to represent a group of flowers like that without painting each individual flower in detail. So then I decided to go to my sketchbook and do it here. And what I didn't realize, even though this is a 140 pound paper in the sketchbook, it's not Arches paper. And so a good lesson is to always practice on the type of paper that you're going to be painting on, or you get different results. So the very first thing I noticed was that my color is a lot darker, which wouldn't be a bad thing. I think the real problem is this paper doesn't really take the water like the Arches paper does. You can see the paper kind of sitting on, or the water kind of sitting on the surface. And overall, it's just the paint is just darker and more vibrant right now, but it's a little harder to handle on this paper. But I'm going to just keep going and see what happens here. I also don't like those hard edges at the top very much. I'll probably try to go back and blend some of those out and soften them a bit. But already I can tell that there's much more color in this, and it's just the paper's having a hard time with the water. And that's true of a lot of sketchbooks. And it's funny because I've done lots of paintings in this sketchbook, and I just don't remember having this problem, but I probably never had done one that had such a concentrated area with water, with a lot of water. So I'm just adding in the purples now. I feel like I would have been better off with this one, maybe not adding the purple, but oh well, it's already done. And notice that I didn't leave a lot of room to add the green in toward the center of those flowers. And I don't remember if that was intentional or not, but I just have to work with what I have. So I'm mixing up some green now with my sap green and cobalt blue and adding it to the bottom of the group of flowers. And there's a little space in the center where I added some more. But I didn't add too much just because there wasn't enough room to do that. But I think it looks fine that way. I'm okay with that. And I'm just adding more at the bottom, always laying down my lighter green first, the green gold, before I add the dark green. And in a larger painting, you can see it a lot better, but when you lay down the lighter color first and then don't cover the entire area with the dark green, it really has a nice effect. There I had just taken away my sketchbook for a minute to dry it with my heat gun because it had so much water on it. So I think that's it for that sketch, but I want to show you now another way you could do this. I'm back to my Arches paper now, which I know I'm going to have better success with, but I just wanted to show you a little bit easier or quicker way to represent a group of flowers like this without going into very much detail. So I have my quinacridone rose set out and my cobalt blue. So I start the same way by flicking water on the paper and then adding the quinacridone rose first. So all of this is the same, really. And I was using a fairly small brush, maybe a number 4 or 6. And so I don't have a lot of water on that brush, and I go back and soften edges quite a bit because I like the look of those softened edges on the flowers. So all of this is going to look similar to what I was doing before. Same idea. And think of this as just one big bunch of color rather than individual flowers. Think of it as just an area of color. And that's what I'm really trying to represent here. Primarily the quinacridone rose, I added in a little bit of the cobalt blue mixed with it to make a purple. And you'll see that I dropped in some orangish color for some highlights at the top. That was my permanent yellow deep, that's like an orange. So now what I'm doing, instead of worrying about getting that green up in the flowers, all I do is put it right at the bottom of this group of flowers. And I had mixed up some sap green and cobalt blue, again, to do that, along with my green gold. And that's it. And I had more water on this when I did the flowers and the greenery, so you can see how nicely that green blends up into the pink. I love the look of that. So, but it was much faster to do that, especially if you use a brush larger than I did, which I would normally do. So it's just another quick way to do that. Just get your color in, the main color, and then add the greenery at the bottom. It's a nice, quick, easy way to do it, and I really like the look of that. So here's the finished piece in my sketchbook. And I already mentioned that I wasn't crazy about the color and how it reacted on this paper. But I had decided to go back and put shadows that were in the photograph underneath the cart. And a good lesson learned, don't use your better judgment and don't necessarily paint it just like it appears on the photo. I should have made the shadows more horizontal and had some white space in between the flowers and the shadows. A lesson learned. Anyway, I hope this video might help you, and thanks for watching.